Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. We're going to talk about some Impact Wrestling. It's been a very busy day, I must say, for yours truly. But I'm going to fit in some time to talk about Impact Wrestling because we have to. Because I don't like to say I told you so, guys, but I told you so. Because Christian Cage is the new Impact World Champion. Spoiler, I mean, you probably saw it on the thumbnail of this video, and you probably watched Rampage, like many of us. Last night, it was, of course, AEW's premiere episode of Rampage, and the very first match on Rampage last night featured the then Impact World Champion Kenny Omega, and, of course, the AEW World Champion, too, defending the Impact World Championship against Christian Cage. Now, of course, Kenny Omega is defending the AEW World Championship against Christian Cage at All Out on September 5th, so last night was a bit of a preview of that, and surprisingly to some, for myself, it wasn't a surprise. If you've watched the channel over the course of the last few days, you'll know that I kind of felt like this one was coming for a variety of reasons, and we'll touch on that as we go through the video. But Christian Cage won the Impact World Championship on last night's premiere episode of AEW Rampage. In the opener of last night's debut episode, Christian picked up the pinfall victory on Kenny Omega near the end of the match. Don Callis attempted to distract the referee, which of course was Impact official Brian Hebner, while the AEW World Tag Team Champions and Executive Vice Presidents and Kenny Omega's partners in the Elite, the Young Bucks, slid a steel chair into the ring, but Kenny Omega attempted to hit a one-winged angel on the chair, but Christian Cage reversed into his finisher, the kill switch, and got the victory. Now, in the post-match, Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, and the Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President himself, Scott D'Amore, celebrated with Christian Cage. Now, going into this match, of course, Christian Cage was undefeated. He was the number one ranked wrestler to Kenny Omega's AEW World Championship. Cage first signed with AEW back in March. So, I thought the match, it must be said, and this is what I was kind of saying quite a lot about the whole Kenny Omega Christian Cage stuff recently, that I was never in any doubt whatsoever that this would be a good match. And last night was evidence of that. It was a great match last night. I mean, you struggled to find a better one. Christian Cage, for all of the, I don't want to say criticism towards him or anything like that, because I don't think it's been criticism necessarily towards Christian Cage. I just think when it comes to Kenny Omega and Christian Cage for All Out, main event, AEW World Championship, nobody was ever in doubt that it was going to be a good match at all. At all. Nobody was ever in doubt for anything like that. I think it was just a case of, is this truly the best match that AEW can offer right now? Does it feel like a pay-per-view main event? Considering AEW has 4 pay-per-view main events per year, you know, those tentpole events, especially an event like All Out, which is, you know, that's got the heritage of All In, which kind of was the pilot for AEW, all that kind of stuff. Is Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega the biggest match you can do? Now, I don't know what the biggest match AEW can do right now is. I think a lot of people wanted it to be Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega. That's not happening. Hangman Page is taking some time off of television to attend to the birth of his first child. So maybe this is the biggest match that AEW can do. I don't know. It's certainly a match they've been teasing since Cage signed with AEW back in March. So they've been building to this one for a while. When it comes to the Impact side of things, and this is an Impact video, so we are going to talk about Impact Wrestling. When it comes to the Impact side of things, look, again, I wasn't surprised. And I know that a lot of people, even when the match was announced on Wednesday night on Dynamite, felt that Christian Cage wouldn't win the Impact World Championship. The more I thought about it between Wednesday and Friday, I did the video Thursday, I did the video Friday, the more I thought about it, it just felt inevitable. It just felt inevitable that Christian Cage would leave Rampage the Impact World Champion. There were more reasons, in my opinion, for Christian Cage to leave as the Impact World Champion than for him to not leave as the Impact World Champion. Now, the biggest reason for him to not leave as the Impact World Champion was that spot of the person that beats Kenny Omega for the World Championship should be designated for an Impact Wrestling talent. I think one of the bigger reasons why, that was probably the biggest reason, but for me, the reason why Christian Cage should win is a variety of reasons. One is that they're trying to add stakes. They're trying to add stakes into that AEW World Championship match at All Out. As I mentioned before, nobody, I don't think realistically thinks that Christian Cage is going to win the AEW World Championship. Irrespective of last night, I don't think he's going to win the AEW World Championship. But for what it's worth, there is at least an element of doubt now in your mind. Well, he beat him on Rampage for the Impact World Championship. Maybe, right? Maybe. But it's unlikely, but maybe. And I think it all builds towards a near fall. I think that Christian Cage is going to hit the kill switch in that match All Out, and Kenny Omega is going to kick out at 2 7/8 or something very close like that, and it's going to be a great near fall. So I think that's why. I think they wanted to add an element of Christian Cage can beat Kenny Omega. That's one thing. 2, I think they wanted to add extra stakes to the match in terms of probably making it title for title. I think there might be a case of the belt collector wanting to get his belts back at All Out. So I certainly could see a situation where we have an AEW and an Impact World Championship match main eventing All Out in September. So I think that's a possibility too. And from an Impact perspective, look, Kenny Omega being on Impact Wrestling every single week was great. I don't want to say I think it was getting stale, because I don't think that's fair to Kenny Omega, who is one of, if not the pro wrestler on the planet today. He's right up there. He's in that conversation. But I don't want to say it wasn't working either, because at points it did. I think a significant factor, I think, might be the ratings. The ratings haven't been good recently for Impact, and we'll touch on that again because the ratings for this past Thursday's episode of Impact Wrestling on Access TV have come out. But I think there is certainly a point of discussion of that the ratings haven't been as good as we'd want them to be. Earlier this year, we were closer to 200,000. Now we're closer to 100,000 than we are to 200,000. So we've lost essentially half our viewership between then and now. Why has that happened? We've got fans back. We've got a better roster. We've got Kenny Omega every single week. We've got Jay White. Shouldn't our ratings be better than ever? And they're not. I do think spoilers have a big part to play in that. But I do think that they're probably looking at it going, you know what? If we have Christian Cage as the Impact World Champion for just 3 weeks, even if he loses the championship back to Kenny Omega All Out, if we have Christian Cage as the Impact World Champion for just 3 weeks, that's a big deal. And there will be fans, pro wrestling fans that used to watch Impact Wrestling in the past, back when Christian Cage was a big part of the show, when he was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, when he was feuding with the Main Event Mafia, when he had the Christian Coalition with Tomko and AJ Styles, and he was having matches against Jeff Jarrett and Kurt Angle and Sting, etc., Abyss. I think that people will look at that and say, you know, I used to watch Impact back in the day with Christian Cage. Christian Cage is back in Impact. I love a bit of nostalgia. Who doesn't love a bit of nostalgia? And maybe they might look at it as, you know, it might boost the ratings for a couple of weeks. And it is a nice nostalgia act. Look, let's face it. At the beginning of this year, Christian Cage was still retired. You know, we never thought Christian Cage was going to have another match again, let alone be a world champion, compete in AEW, compete in a Royal Rumble match, and be the Impact World Champion and wrestle in Impact Wrestling once again. That was laughable. If you'd have said that on January 1st, Christian Cage by September, or by August rather, will be the Impact World Champion. He'll be wrestling on Impact Wrestling as the Impact World Champion, but he'll be signed to AEW. Oh, and he would have returned at the Royal Rumble match earlier this year. People would have laughed in your face. People would have said, that's crazy. So maybe it's a great redemption story as well. Christian looks phenomenal right now. Let's be honest here. The match last night was great. So I think that's interesting. I still think, and I might be wrong here, but I'm feeling pretty good about myself because I managed to predict this one. I still think that Kenny Omega will be the Impact World Champion again. I still think that Kenny Omega will drop the Impact World Championship to an Impact Wrestling talent. I think that talent will be Josh Alexander, and I think they'll be in the main event of Bound for Glory. Now, that could just as easily now be Christian. I don't think it will be, though. I still do think that this will be a bit of a shallow victory, if you will, for Impact Wrestling, because Impact Wrestling are going to celebrate this like ding dong, the witch is dead. Kenny Omega and Don Callis, the cancer has been cut out of Impact Wrestling. And I don't think that will be the case. I do think Omega and Callis will be back in Impact. I do think Omega will win the Impact Championship once again. And I do think he'll then drop the championship at Bound for Glory to a Josh Alexander or a Moose. That's always been my working plan. I don't know if that's the plan that they're going to go with, but hey, that's what I think the direction is going to be. But really enjoyed the match, and it's just wild, isn't it? I mean, it's just wild to see Christian Cage holding the Impact World Championship, but also he's holding the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. It is such a throwback title, so it was very exciting to see. And look, the crowd went crazy, absolutely crazy for that finish last night, and you can't argue against that. The crowd knows what it wants, and the crowd knows good when they see it. So huge credit to Cage and Omega and AEW and Impact for pulling off what was a really fun and enjoyable moment last night. Now, speaking of Christian Cage, he will be at the next set of Impact Wrestling television tapings right after Christian Cage won the Impact World Championship. Impact released the following press release saying Christian Cage returns to the Impact Zone on Monday, August 16 in Nashville, Tennessee. New Impact Wrestling World Champion Christian Cage will make his return to the Impact Zone on Monday, August 16. Impact executives confirmed moments after the AEW superstar defeated Kenny Omega tonight on AEW Rampage to claim the Impact World Championship. Impact Wrestling has shows August 15 through 17 at Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, with 2 shows daily, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. local time. Tickets to all shows are now available. Get them here, and it posts the Impact Wrestling link. Christian Cage's return this Monday to the Impact Zone marks his first time inside of an Impact Wrestling ring in almost 10 years. He will appear on the weekly flagship show Impact this upcoming Thursday, August 19, which airs from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern on Access TV in the US and around the world on Impact Wrestling's new YouTube membership, Impact Insiders. Christian Cage is a 2-time Impact World Heavyweight Champion, first claiming the title in early 2006 at the Against All Odds pay-per-view. Then at Final Resolution in January 2007, he defeated Abyss and Sting in a 3-way elimination match to reclaim the championship. Kind of, they're being economical with the truth. I suppose in terms of the... I suppose in Impact history, he's a 2-time World Heavyweight Champion of the World Heavyweight Championship they were using at the time, but Christian Cage is technically a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion because Impact was using the NWA World Heavyweight Championship at the time as opposed to the Impact World Championship. But look, he is a significant part of Impact Wrestling's history. Seeing him back at the Impact Wrestling tapings is going to be great. Seeing him back inside of an Impact Wrestling ring is going to be fantastic. And I, for one, am very excited to see it. Now, obviously, that does change some things because, and this again, I mentioned this before when we were talking about this previously. One of the big reasons why I felt that Christian Cage was going to win the Impact World Championship last night on Rampage was because, to me, the Kenny Omega and Brian Myers match for the Impact World Championship made 0 sense. 0 sense. When it happened, when it first came out, the spoilers came out a couple of weeks ago, that Brian Myers was the number 1 contender. At the time, I was very critical of it. I went, you know what? That just doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't see it. I don't see why would you go with that match? That match has no interest. Kenny Omega, Brian Myers, it's a heel versus heel match. Those matches for Kenny Omega inside of an Impact Wrestling ring are gold dust. They're very important. They're very finite, as well. And look, you need to make the most of them. You need to get over your younger, less established talent that's contracted to Impact Wrestling. Your Chris Bays, your Ace Austins. You want to see them face off against Kenny Omega inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. So Brian Myers versus Kenny Omega was very odd to me at the time. Then, once the match was announced on Wednesday, that it was going to be Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship, then it started to sort of turn over in my head. Then I started to think, wait a minute, Christian Cage is a babyface, Brian Myers is a heel. That makes a lot more sense to me. That makes far, far more sense to me. So I thought, okay, that's another reason as to why Christian Cage could become the next Impact World Champion. Now, there is kind of a connection, I guess. It's a very, very, very loose one in the sense that, of course, Kurt Hawkins really established himself in WWE by being an edgehead, as in the La Familia faction when he was... when they had the Edge and Vicky Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero and Bam Neely, do you remember that name? All that kind of stuff. He was a sort of Edge lookalike, and then he was an Edge lackey. Of course, Christian, best friend with Edge. Whether or not they will reference that, I have no idea. It would be fun if they did. Look, again, a bit like the Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega match main event to All Out. I have no doubt the match between Christian Cage and Brian Myers will be fine. It will be a good match. It probably interests me a little bit more than Kenny Omega versus Brian Myers, just because from a heel and babyface point of view, it works. But still, it doesn't change the fact that Brian Myers I find to be a very bizarre selection to be the number 1 contender for the Impact World Championship. But I suppose looking at it now from an objective point of view, probably it's just a case of they just want to have Christian Cage have an Impact World Championship defense. I think that's probably the case, because I do think that he'll drop the championship back to Kenny Omega at All Out. So I think they probably want him to have an Impact World Championship, successful Impact World Championship defense, and then then they'll move on to All Out. I think that's probably the direction that they'll go. So I think it's just a formality that Christian Cage retains the Impact World Championship against Brian Myers there. So it does raise the question, is Don Callis and Kenny Omega, are they done inside of an Impact Wrestling ring right now? It looks like Don Callis and the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega may be done with Impact Wrestling for now anyway. Now, as I mentioned, on the premiere episode of Rampage on Friday from Pittsburgh, Christian Cage defeated Kenny Omega to capture the Impact World Championship. In an update, Impact Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore took to Twitter after the show and indicated that Omega and Callis have made their final appearances for Impact, at least for now. He said, quote, "It feels like the world is right again after last night's or tonight's AEW Rampage. The Impact World Championship belongs to Christian. It's time to bid adieu to Kenny Omega and Don Callis. It's time to say goodbye. Kisses, finger gun. Good night. Bang." Now, Impact and AEW then released post-show footage of Christian talking about the big victory. He declared the Impact World Championship is back home where it belongs. He said, quote, "I'm pretty beat up. It's a pretty surreal moment, to be honest with you. I put myself kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit, where I said that I was going to, without a doubt, beat Kenny Omega for the Impact Championship, and I was going to be in the Impact Zone this coming week, and I would look pretty much like an idiot if I didn't follow through on that, right? But it feels damn good, and like I said, my roots run deep with Impact, and I thought it was my duty to win this back for the Impact fans, because this company means so much to me, so it's back where it belongs." I do kind of find it a little bit funny that they're like, see, the Impact World Championship is back home. It's back where it belongs on an AEW contracted talent. So I'm not sure about that one. Look, I think, Christian, whilst he's not he's not an Impact Wrestling contracted talent, I guess it's a former Impact Wrestling star. It's a former Impact Wrestling legend, so they can say it's back home. But until that championship's on an Impact Wrestling contracted talent, it's not back home. But look, it was a great match, a great moment. It's a huge story, and it's the continuation of this really blossoming working relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling. Look, you don't have your world championship on 2 consecutive contracted talents from another company if you're not all in, pun intended, with that company. So the working relationship, the forbidden door when it comes to AEW and Impact Wrestling is firmly open, and I, for one, am fascinated, absolutely fascinated to see what happens when Christian Cage shows up on Impact Wrestling this week. Now, finally, I do want to talk about the Impact ratings for this past Thursday, because Thursday's new edition of Impact Wrestling on Access TV drew 122,000 live viewers on Access TV, according to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics. Now, this number is up 18.45% from last week's 103,000 viewers for the post-Homecoming episode, which frankly was a record low. I know it wasn't officially, but it was a record low. Thursday's episode drew a 0.04 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic. Now, this is even from last week's key demo rating, so it's just a case of more viewers tuning in, but the demo remained exactly the same. But this week's Impact drew the best audience since the June 10 episode. Viewership was up 18.45% from last week. As I mentioned, the key 18 to 49 demo was even. Impact viewership on Thursday was still down, though, 23% from the same week in 2020. So that's significant. And once again, it's not a case of they're a bad product. I think the Impact Wrestling product is better than it's been for a while. I think it's better than it was last year. You had a number 1 contenders battle royal main event. You had Jay White and Chris Bay versus Finn Juice, Josh Alexander versus Sean Devary, Taylor Wilde versus Tenille Dashwood. You had a strong episode, a very strong episode. And despite that, it's down nearly 25% from last year. I think, like we've spoken about several times here on the channel, I do think that spoilers play a massive, massive, massive part in this. It'll be interesting to see the bounce that Christian Cage gives it. I think, irrespective of the spoilers, whether or not Impact Wrestling can try and put in a policy of, look, if you sign a ticket, if you purchase a ticket, then you have to sign some kind of confidentiality agreement, or if you post spoilers, we can fine you, or something like that. I think they need to do something like that for the sake of their ratings, for the sake of their viewership. But I think without a doubt, Christian Cage's victory and the recent Impact exposure on AEW has to help the ratings. I think they'll be really disappointed if the ratings don't increase this week with a World Championship change, a former Impact Wrestling talent returning to the company. That's a big deal. So I think they'll be hoping for that. But I guess this is positive news. I mean, the 122,000 viewers is back to really what they were doing at the beginning of July. I mean, to be honest, around June time. Because again, even around the end of May, they were still doing 140,000 live viewers. That's pretty impressive. So to drop all the way down to like last week, 103 was alarming. But now getting back to 120, they'll be happy with that. But there's always room for more. And it'll be a case of Impact Wrestling. Can they get there or not? But look, guys, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really interact with you guys talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.